magic of island readers and writers is when I hear a child say, "Books make my world feel big." We travel by boat, by plane, and by car to our partner schools. Each one has a different personality. Some are one-room schools, like Frenchboro that is 7 miles out to sea, and others are multi-grade, like Beals. Island Readers and Writers has a network of 26 partner schools that spans the Maine coast from Cliff Island in the southernmost part all the way up to the easternmost part of Washington County with the Passamaquoddy Reservation schools. So why should you care about Island Readers and Writers and the children that we serve? These children are the future. They're the future of Maine, and they're the future of their communities. We know from the research that children who read are children who are engaged citizens as adults. And these are the children that need us more than ever.
In this particular area, most everybody is in the fishing industry, which is also on the brink of maybe not being there for the hundreds of years that it has already been. Most everybody here is a generational fisherman. Goes back to their great-grandparents. Most of the children in this school, by the age of 10, have their own lobster license and have their own traps. The fear is that that's not going to continue, that they're not going to be able to do that.
I have a very specific perspective as someone who grew up on Deer Isle, who went away, who never thought they'd come back or could ever belong on this island. But here I am, I'm back. It is a tough place to grow up. In rural Maine, it's definitely one of the areas in the country that's been hit hard by the opioid epidemic. We definitely have students who are coming to us who have lost parents.
There's stigma. There could be domestic violence, hunger. The schools around here all have had to put food pantries into their programs. So the schools are doing a lot more for these kids than they typically would be doing, just because we don't have the resources in the community.
So you make your shape in this stuff twisted.
One of the many things that is so extraordinary about Island Readers and Writers is the time and effort they put into building relationships with schools and school communities, so that this is not just a one-off that they bring an author into the school. They bring authors every year, year after year.
We have been able to work with authors and illustrators with exceptional skills, great hearts, that are very interested in the children we serve and interest in Maine children.
IRW has just introduced me to this whole new world, and I find my bliss in elementary school classrooms, which is something I never could have imagined. And the reason I find my bliss there is just being around the creativity and energy of those children, writing their stories, sharing stories, making their art, and I'm really in awe of them.
Because of the isolation that these kids live in, and they pretty much know how their parents live, and it's many times how their grandparents live and how their great-grandparents live. So their perception of the world is pretty narrow.
On the highest rock of a tiny island at the edge of the world stands a lighthouse. It is built to last forever.
At the edge of the world stands a lighthouse. It is built to last forever, sending its light out to sea.
So being able to have an author to come into the school that has a varied background, or authors and illustrators that have varied backgrounds, it opens up new avenues for them. It opens up scientists, being a marine scientist. It may open up being a musician. It may open up being something different. So Russ Cox is visiting us next month, and he's going to visit grades pre-K through 4. So that whole side of the building is abuzz with work. We've got paper mache planets being created. We've got space people's uniforms being created. We've got space helmets being created.
The astronauts that are on our International Space Station.
We've got space research being done by the 3rd and 4th grade. So every room has an entire docket solid full of projects ready to be completed.
Sometimes I'll take a sketch that I like.
I think with Faraway Friends, when I come in and do the school visits, I think the kids, they start maybe learning about planets. Maybe they really had no interest in it before, and they started, oh, well, there's this space and all this, there's spaceships. I can build a spaceship, or I can make a space helmet. So I think they learn about planets, but also they're learning storytelling skills when they come up with their own stories. Also, art skills.
Island Readers and Writers helps make the idea of becoming a published author or illustrator seem more accessible and achievable for our kids.
Having the kids talk to the authors and learning about their process of writing, that's really fascinating to students. Like, how do you come up with the ideas? How do you go about, getting them to paper, and, what happens after that? And how long does it take to write books? Kids come up with just the best questions, and sometimes even stumps the authors.
We had a fun visit at Charlotte Elementary School. The first thing we did was take a field trip. We borrowed a school bus and took a drive through the Moosehorn National Wildlife Refuge. And it was a cold October morning. Everybody was bundled up and our breath was all frosty. And we stopped to observe a beaver lodge. Just that experience of focusing, quieting down. How would you describe this structure? What does it look like? What is the water like? It's about being present. Again, they're aware of their surroundings.
So, what do you notice?
Some are taller than others.
Some are taller than others.
The joy that I see when the kids are presented a book from the author, standing in that line waiting to get that author's signature, they're just beaming from ear to ear, because they don't have that opportunity to have many books at home. Many of the kids, that may be that first book that they've ever had given to them.
There was a girl who took her book and she said, where should I put it? And I said, oh, I think you could put it in your backpack. And she said, I'm allowed to take it home? And I said, yes, it's your book. And she said, but I have to bring it back tomorrow, right? And I said, you can do whatever you like with it. It's your book. You can keep it. She said, forever. I said, yes, forever. And she said, I am going to read it every day for the rest of my life. I'll remember that forever.
When they're in line and I'm signing the book and they're able to talk to me, I think it just thinks of, oh, this is just a regular person. It's oh yes, so he writes and draws pictures for a living, but oh, he talked to me.
Foreman, what is that?
Yeah, what's your favorite thing to do?
I was at a school and I believe he was a 7th grader. He came up to me and he did this whole PowerPoint presentation that he just showed to me on his laptop. So he was telling me about it and I looked over at the teachers and they're just shaking their head like, I'm like, okay, there's something wrong. And so I went back and paid attention to what he said. And he said, thank you very much for coming in. And I was honored and I went up to the teachers and I said, well, something wrong? They're like, he doesn't talk. He's the quiet one. We can't even get him to answer questions in class. He did all this on his own because he was inspired by the book. So to make that connection with that one student, first of all, it just melts your heart, but also I realized this is why I do what I do. I think these kids can often be forgotten, but I think the next Steve Jobs is sitting in those rooms. I think the next Maurice Sendak, the next Mary Blair. I think there's so much talent that can go forgotten because there's such a small community. They don't have access to the funds like a bigger community. So I think a lot of those places, the future is right there in those classrooms. We can't forget about them.